The first thing I remember is the light. It spilled from the chandelier in my father's foyer like something staged, warm, golden, expensive. It hit the marble floors, the crystal glasses, the polished smiles. It lit every face in that room so clearly that no one could pretend not to see what was happening. My father stood beside me with one hand on my shoulder, guiding me into place the way he always had, close enough to be seen. Far enough to remind everyone I didn't quite belong in the center of things. He lifted his glass and smiled at the crowd. "And this," he said, squeezing my shoulder lightly, "is my younger daughter. Not exactly the one we brag about, but she insisted on joining us." The laughter came right away, not loud, not wild, just controlled, polished, socially acceptable. The kind of laughter people use when they want to be cruel without looking cruel. "Relax," my father added, just loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. "She's always been too serious." More smiles, more soft laughter. A woman in pearls hid behind her wine glass. A man beside her nodded like he'd just heard something charming and familiar. I didn't react. I'd spent years imagining that time and distance might change something between us. That enough accomplishment, real accomplishment, measurable and undeniable, might one day force him to look at me differently. But standing there under that chandelier in a house built on image and approval, I understood the truth. My father had never failed to see me. He saw me perfectly. I was simply inconvenient. Then Daniel Carter stepped forward. My sister Emily's fiancé, Navy SEAL, tall, composed, wearing his dress uniform like it belonged to him because it did. There was nothing flashy about him. No performance, no need to dominate a room. Men like that don't need to announce themselves. He offered his hand. "Daniel," he said, "I've heard a lot about you." There was something almost ironic about that, but I took his hand anyway. His grip was firm, familiar, professional. Then he looked at me again, not socially. Not casually, he was reading me, posture, bearing, stillness, things civilians never notice. His eyes dropped briefly, not to the obvious parts of my uniform, not to anything decorative, but to the details that matter to someone trained to see them, the way I held myself, the insignia. The quiet certainty. His expression changed, only slightly but enough. He released my hand, stepped back half a pace, and then, in front of everyone, raised his hand in a sharp, unmistakable salute. "Ma'am," he said evenly, "Admiral." The room went silent, not gradually, completely. A glass clicked against a table somewhere. Someone inhaled too sharply. My father's hand slipped from my shoulder. I kept my eyes on Daniel. He held the salute the exact right length, then lowered it. "Apologies," he said quietly. "I didn't expect to find you here." "You have nothing to apologize for," I answered. Behind us, whispers started immediately. "Admiral, did he just say?" "No, that can't be right." Then I turned toward my father. Frank Whitman was still holding his drink, still standing straight. Still trying to wear the same confident smile, but something behind it had shifted. "Daniel," he said with forced ease, "you must be mistaken." Daniel glanced at me, a question, permission. I gave him the smallest shake of my head. "Not here, not yet," he understood instantly. "Wouldn't be the first time I misread a situation," he said. It was a graceful answer, respectful, neutral. But it was too late, the word had already been spoken. "Admiral," and once a truth like that enters a room, it doesn't leave. My father laughed too quickly. "Well," he said, lifting his glass again, "let's not make this dramatic. She's always had a talent for that." This time, only a few people chuckled. I felt the shift, so did he. The room wasn't leaning entirely toward him anymore. "I'm going outside," I said. No one stopped me. For the first time that evening, I wasn't the smallest person in the room. I walked through the hallway past family photos that looked more like curated exhibits than memories. Emily's graduation, charity galas, my father accepting awards, smiling portraits in silver frames. I wasn't in any of the recent ones. That used to hurt. Now it just felt honest. Outside, the cool evening air met me like a release. Grass, asphalt, distant traffic, real things, unstaged things. I stood on the front steps and exhaled slowly. Behind me, the door opened. "You should have said something." My father's voice was tight, controlled, already angry. I kept looking out at the dark street. There was nothing to say. "You embarrass me." I almost smiled at that. I didn't say a word. He stepped closer. "You're going to explain this." I turned then and met his eyes. "No," I said, and for the first time in my life I meant it. Later, when I stepped back inside, the house felt different, not louder. Quieter, actually, but everyone was recalculating now. Conversations were shorter. Laughter ended faster. People looked at me instead of past me. That was dangerous in a different way. I was walking down the back hallway when Emily found me. She leaned against the doorway, graceful as ever, elegant in the effortless way people had always rewarded in her. "You always stop at that photo," she said. I glanced at the framed picture in front of me, Emily in white, my father beside her, both of them smiling like they belonged in a magazine spread. I do, she nodded, every time. For a moment neither of us said anything, then she asked, is it true? I looked at her. Does it matter? To Dad? Yes, I gave a short nod. That sounds right, she folded her arms, you could have told us. When? I asked. At Thanksgiving, Christmas. Right after Dad introduced me as the daughter he was actually proud of. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, I said, it's accurate. She looked away first. Daniel's going to ask questions, she said. I expect he will. And Dad's upset. Of course he is, she let out a breath. Just be careful, it wasn't affection. It wasn't really warning either. It was habit, preservation. Emily had always survived by staying close to the version of the family my father wanted displayed. I understood that even if I didn't respect it. After she left, I went upstairs to my old room. The furniture was still there, the curtains, the bed frame, even the faint scent of clean linen. But the room wasn't mine anymore. The shelves were empty, the walls were bare. Every trace of me had been removed so neatly it felt less like cleaning and more like editing. 17. That was the last time I had stood in that room believing I still had a place there. West Point had accepted me. I remembered standing in my father's study holding that letter like it was a passport. He read the first page, set it down and said, "You're not going." I thought I'd misheard him. I got in, and you'll decline, like the decision was already settled. Like my future belonged to him by default. When I told him I was going anyway, he looked at me for a long time and said, "If you walk out that door for this, don't expect us to celebrate it." I remember answering, "I'm not asking you to celebrate. I'm asking you to understand." He said, "I understand perfectly, you're making a mistake." Maybe I was, but I knew if I stayed I would disappear, so I left. The knock on the bedroom door pulled me back. My father stood there. "We need to talk," he said. "Yes," I told him, "we do." He came inside, glanced around the stripped room, then faced me. "Explain what happened downstairs." Daniel recognized me. "That's not enough. It's the truth." His composure cracked for the first time. "People don't salute strangers." "I'm not a stranger to him." He stepped closer. "Then tell me what you've been doing all these years." I held his gaze. "I've always told you the truth. You only listened to the parts that fit your version of me." That stopped him. Then his expression hardened again. "You humiliated me in front of people who matter." I said, "Then stop handing them lies." He laughed once, humorless. "You've always been difficult. And you've always called it that when you couldn't control me." The room went still. He looked at me as if I'd spoken a language he hated but understood. "This isn't over," he said finally. "I know." He left. A minute later there was another knock. This time it was Daniel. He stepped into the room, took one look at the bare shelves and empty walls and said, "That's not how someone gets treated after doing what you've done. People see what they expect to see," I replied. "And your father expects less." He didn't say it cruelly, just plainly. Then he asked the question that mattered. "Why didn't you correct him?" "Because it wouldn't change anything." "It would to me." "That's different." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Kandahar, 2018, joint extraction. Bad ground, worse intel, you were in command." The memory came back instantly. Dust, noise, a collapsing operation, lives hanging on timing. "You ordered the pullout," he said. "You saved us." "I did my job." He nodded like he expected that answer. "Your father doesn't know any of that." "No, and you're willing to let him keep underestimating you?" I thought about that before answering. "This isn't about facts," I said. "It's about narrative. He already decided who I am. If I argue, I become the problem." Daniel studied me, then nodded. "He's going to escalate." "I know. He's going to try to control the story." "Yes." He pulled out his phone and showed me an official summary, after action recognition, my name, my command. "Verified details." "You may need this," he said. I looked at it, then handed the phone back. "Not like that." He frowned slightly. "Then how?" "We let him keep talking," I said. "We let him go far enough that the truth doesn't just challenge him, it exposes him." A slow understanding crossed his face. "Publicly, yes. At the engagement dinner." "Yes." He gave one short nod. "Then we'll be ready." The next morning proved him right. I found my father in the kitchen, coffee in hand, tablet on the counter. He turned it toward me. A local article was already live, carefully written, professionally framed, built out of anonymous concerns and half-truths. Nothing direct enough to sue over, just enough to cast doubt. Emotionally unstable, estranged, obsessed with validation, I read it and set the tablet down. "This is rushed," I said. He smiled coldly. "It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to raise questions." There it was, no denial, just strategy. Then he slid a folder toward me. "Tonight is important," he said. "Emily's future depends on it." I opened the folder. Legal language, clean, final, deliberate. My mother's estate, a transfer of rights, full relinquishment, effective immediately. "You want me to sign away my claim?" "I want you to do what's right for this family. For Emily, for stability. For you," I corrected. He didn't answer. I'm not signing this, you haven't had it reviewed. I don't need to, have your attorney look at it then, I almost laughed. You're being generous now, I'm being practical. No, I said, you're being predictable. His face tightened. This is family, no, this is control. He turned away, then back again. Tonight you'll do exactly what I ask. I said nothing because we both knew I wouldn't. Later that morning, Daniel and I met in a small coffee shop outside town. Worn tables, burnt espresso, no one looking twice at anyone. He already had coffee waiting. Black, he said, I guessed. You guessed right. He showed me the article. As if I hadn't already seen it. He's moving fast, Daniel said. He always does. Then he showed me something else. A video message from a retired 4-star general. Clear, direct, unquestionable. He confirmed my name, my rank, my command. No drama, just fact. That should do it, Daniel said. It will. We talked through the evening. My father would speak first. Of course he would. He would build the story he wanted everyone to believe. I would not interrupt him. I would not defend myself. I would let him commit to it in full view of the people whose approval he valued most. Then reality would arrive from someone else. Not emotional, not messy, clean, precise, final. By the time I walked into the ballroom that evening, I already knew exactly how it would unfold. The room was everything my father loved, large, elegant, carefully managed. White linen, crystal, measured laughter. The kind of event where reputation sits at every table. I arrived 10 minutes early and took a seat near the back. Not hiding, not center stage, positioned. Emily sat at the front beside Daniel, composed and beautiful and unreadable. The MC welcomed everyone, made a few polished jokes, then invited my father to speak. Frank Whitman rose to applause. He took the stage like he belonged there. Maybe he thought he still did. He spoke about legacy, about family, about values. Then he praised Emily for her grace, her judgment, her ability to represent the family well. People applauded. Then his tone changed. Not every path, he said, leads somewhere meaningful. Some people spend their lives chasing titles and forgetting what actually matters. He didn't say my name, he didn't need to, I stayed still. Let him finish. He lifted his glass and smiled at the crowd, satisfied that he'd restored the balance of the room. Then Daniel stood. He crossed to the stage before the MC could move on and took the microphone. Before we continue, he said, there's someone here I need to acknowledge. The room quieted. He looked toward the back, toward me. I stood. He didn't hesitate. Admiral Whitman, he said clearly. This time there was no ambiguity, no room for denial. He saluted. I returned it. At that exact moment, the screen behind the stage came to life. My name, my rank, my command, official verification. Then the short video from the 4-star general confirming it all in terms no one in that room could dismiss. The silence broke like glass. Whispers rippled across the ballroom. Chairs shifted. A few people stood, then others followed. Applause began, not wild, not celebratory, but corrective, respectful, real. My father stepped forward too late. This is absurd, he snapped. There's been a misunderstanding. But no one moved toward him. No one rushed to rescue him, because the truth was already standing in the room and it no longer needed permission. I didn't speak. I didn't explain, I didn't stay long. That was the point of all of it. The truth didn't need me to force it once it had been seen clearly enough, so I left. The next morning, my father came to my apartment. He looked exactly like himself and nothing like the man who had walked into that ballroom the night before. You humiliated me, he said as soon as I opened the door. I didn't say a word. That's not how it looked. That's because people finally saw what was already true. He paced once through my living room like he could still find leverage if he kept moving. Everything I built depends on perception, he said. And now it depends on honesty, I replied. That landed. For the first time, he asked a real question. What do you want? I thought about it before answering. Boundaries, he frowned. Boundaries, you don't speak for me, you don't define me. You don't get to reduce my life so it fits your comfort. And if I disagree, it doesn't require your agreement. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, because he was still himself, he asked, what about the house? Always back to assets, structure, ownership. My lawyer will contact yours, I said. You can remain there at fair market rent. His eyes narrowed. And the money, it goes into a scholarship fund. For what? For the families of service members who didn't make it home. He stared at me. You do that? I already did. He shook his head slowly, almost in disbelief. You're unbelievable. No, I said, I'm just done pretending. He moved toward the door, then paused. You really think this changes everything? I answered honestly. No, it just makes everything honest. He gave one short nod and left. When the door closed, the apartment went quiet again. I stood by the window and watched traffic move below like any other morning. People going to work, a dog walker crossing the street, a bus stopping at the corner. The world continuing the way it always does, indifferent to private battles, untouched by the moment you finally stop shrinking for someone else's comfort. And maybe that was the strangest part. I had spent years wanting to be seen, to be understood, to be acknowledged by people who had already decided who I was allowed to be. Then one day, without warning, I realized I didn't need any of that, not because the truth didn't matter, but because it mattered whether I needed them to accept it, and I didn't anymore. What mattered was clarity. Clarity doesn't beg, it doesn't argue, it doesn't perform, it simply stands. And if this story stayed with you, if you know what it feels like to be underestimated, overlooked, or forced to make yourself smaller just to keep someone else comfortable, I'd love to hear where you're watching from and what part hit home for you. We share stories like this every day about strength, truth, resilience, and the quiet moments that change everything. If that speaks to you, subscribe and stay with us. We're just getting started.